You walk into a room full of people, and you feel it. That quiet distance you always feel deep inside yourself, like there's glass between you and everyone else. No matter how close they are, you smile, you talk, you go through the motions. But something inside stays untouched, like it was never seen. You've felt this way in different places, with different people, for as long as you remember. And sometimes you wonder if you'll ever find where you truly fit in this world. You didn't become this way by accident. Something shaped you over time. There are people who move through life feeling like they're always on the outside, not because they're unfriendly or broken, but because something inside them learned to stay separate. They can be in a crowded room and still feel alone. They can have friends and still feel like no one really knows them. It's not about being antisocial, it's about carrying a feeling that never quite leaves. The feeling that you don't fully belong anywhere. You watch people connect so easily. They laugh together, make plans, share stories without hesitation. And you wonder what they have that you don't. What invisible thread links them to each other while you remain just slightly out of reach. And most people never realize why this happens. Sometimes it starts early. Maybe you grew up in a home where you had to be careful about what you showed, where your emotions felt too big or too much, where being yourself meant being misunderstood. You learned quickly which parts of you were acceptable and which ones needed to stay hidden. Maybe your sadness was too heavy. Maybe your excitement was too loud. Maybe your needs felt like a burden. So you learned to edit yourself. You learned to show only the parts that were safe. You became an expert at reading the room, at adjusting yourself to fit. And the rest, the messy, complex, real parts, you kept hidden. Over time, that distance became normal. It became your way of being in the world. Or maybe you moved a lot as a child. New schools, new faces, new rules. You learned how to adapt quickly, how to blend in without standing out. But you never stayed long enough to let anyone see the real you. So you became good at surface connection, good at being liked but not known. And now, even when you stay in one place, that pattern remains. You're always ready to leave before anyone gets too close. Some people grew up feeling different. Maybe you were more sensitive than the others. Maybe you thought differently, felt things more deeply. You noticed details that others overlooked, and you noticed early on that your inner world didn't match the world around you. Your depth felt like too much in a world that preferred surface, so you learned to hide it. You learned to perform the version of yourself that people expected, the lighter version, the simpler version. But the real you stayed locked inside, and over time, that gap between who you are and who you show became a wall. Something shaped you, even if no one saw it. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. You can laugh with them, share moments with them, but there's a part of you that stays untouched, because letting someone all the way in feels dangerous. It feels like exposing something fragile, and you've learned that fragile things get hurt. Your mind might tell you that you're the problem, that there's something wrong with you, that everyone else knows how to belong, and you're the only one who doesn't. You see them forming bonds that seem effortless. You see them reaching out without fear, and you wonder why you can't do that. Why every connection feels like it requires so much effort. Why you rehearse conversations before having them. Why you analyze every interaction afterward. But that's not the truth. The truth is, your nervous system learned early that connection comes with risk, that being seen fully means being vulnerable. And vulnerability, in your experience, hasn't always been safe. So your body learned to stay guarded. You want closeness, but it exhausts you. You crave deep connection. You want someone who sees you, really sees you, without you having to explain. But when people get close, something in you pulls back. It's not that you don't care, it's that closeness feels like too much. It triggers something old, something you can't quite name. So you create distance, you cancel plans, you become unavailable. Not because you don't want connection, but because your system is trying to protect you from the overwhelm that intimacy brings. And then the guilt comes. You feel bad for pulling away. You wonder why you can't just be normal, why you can't enjoy things the way other people seem to. But this isn't about being normal or abnormal. It's about what your nervous system learned to survive. It learned that keeping some distance is safer than letting people all the way in. You learned to protect yourself. Here's what people don't understand. Feeling like you don't belong isn't a flaw. It's a response. It's what happens when your early experiences taught you that the world isn't always a safe place to be fully yourself. Maybe you were criticized for being too much or not enough. Maybe you were ignored when you needed to be seen. Maybe love felt conditional, like it could be taken away at any moment. So you learned to hold parts of yourself back, and that pattern of holding back became your relationship with the world. But here's the other side of this. That same sensitivity that made you pull away also makes you deeply aware. You notice things other people miss, the shift in someone's tone, the sadness behind their smile. You feel things other people skim past. You have an inner world that's rich and complex. You think in layers. You connect dots that others don't even notice. And that's not something to fix. That's something to understand. Because people like you are the ones who understand what real connection actually is. You're not broken because you feel this way. You're not damaged because connection feels hard. You're someone who learned to survive in a world that didn't always feel safe. And that survival mechanism, the one that keeps you at a distance, made sense once. It protected you, but now it might be protecting you from things that aren't actually threats anymore. The people who feel like they don't belong anywhere often have the deepest capacity for belonging, because they know what it feels like to be on the outside. They know what it's like to long for a place where they can be themselves without fear. And that longing, that ache, is proof that the desire for connection is still alive inside them. It never left, it just learned to be quiet. Belonging doesn't always look like fitting in. Sometimes it looks like finding one person who gets it. One space where you don't have to perform. One moment where you let your guard down and nothing bad happens. It's not about changing who you are. It's about slowly learning that being seen doesn't always lead to being hurt. You might not feel like you belong anywhere yet, but that doesn't mean you never will. It just means you're still looking for the kind of belonging that matches who you really are. Not the surface version, not the version you show to keep people comfortable, the real one, the one that's been waiting underneath all along. And maybe that's the hardest part, believing that version of you is worth knowing, that someone out there will see you, all of you, and stay. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And real is what connection is actually built on. You've been protecting yourself for so long, and that protection made sense. But protection and connection can't fully coexist. At some point, one of them has to soften, not all at once, not with everyone, but slowly, carefully, with the people who prove they can hold what you carry. You don't have to belong everywhere. You just have to belong somewhere. And that somewhere starts with belonging to yourself first, with letting yourself take up space without apology, with acknowledging that your way of being in the world is valid even if it's different. The glass between you and the world isn't permanent. It's just been there so long it started to feel like it was. But glass can be touched, it can be seen through. And with the right person in the right moment, it can even disappear. Not forever, maybe, but long enough for you to remember what it feels like to be held without having to hide. If this video felt personal, it's because you're not the only one who feels this way. There are people out there who see deeply, feel deeply, and sometimes struggle to find where they belong. And if you're one of them, this channel was made for you. Inner Echo is a quiet place to understand the parts of yourself you don't always show the world. If you want more videos like this, you can subscribe and come back whenever you need to feel a little less alone.